And this is for our friends in West Virginia. We're going to have U.S. House Congressional candidate Nate Cain on the show today to talk about his upcoming campaign.
And welcome back to Conservatives Talk. My name is Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we'd like to take a moment to remind our subjects that they are required by Jamie law that you will find more about in the coming days to make sure that you are hitting the like button as well as the share button. It says, therefore, you must do. It is also required in that law that you subscribe to all of our platforms. That way you will be kept up to date on any new changes to said law. We also have implemented a new kind of a mandatory initiative that you must also go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab there in the upper right-hand corner and donate just like everyone else is asking for. Just wanted to say, can't do that. All right, we'll just pick up right back on and go to searchtalk.org. We're almost done. And we also encourage our viewers to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that donate tab in the upper right-hand corner.
Did it again.
And the donate tab, I don't care less about. I couldn't say the
just like
everybody else.
Yeah. Okay.
Because he's literally begging for money.
I know. He literally begged for $5.
And we also like to ask our viewers to go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to, because every little bit will go a long way to allowing Jamie and I to be able to continue to spread this message and to really reach all the dark recessed corners out there that we all know exist everywhere around the world. They're everywhere. So, Jamie, with that, how about giving us your first reminder?
Boycott hometown headlines. Liberal media is almost out of Northwest Georgia. And once again, it continues with you to continue to boycott hometown headlines. Thank you for what you've done so far. Continue to move the message forward.
Never gets old.
Never gets old.
So we also want to take a moment to thank our affiliates. And our first one being Net News Network. So you can find Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net. It is a grassroots compilation of local on-the-ground newscasters to where you're able to really get a very close, personal, firsthand impression of what's going on from across the entire nation from these localized reporters. We also want to take a quick moment to say thank you to Veterans for America First. So Veterans for America First is the premier America First policy organization, and they really push that agenda through their media arm, Vet Voice. And you can find Vet Voice on every major social media platform. So make sure you are looking for Vet Voice. So, Jamie, with that, how about let's go ahead and bring our guest on.
So, yeah, let's get right back into it. And we want to bring Nate Cain on. So, Nate.
Hey, sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Outstanding. Love it. So we want to really take a quick moment with this because we know that you're running for U.S. Congress, and we know that you are running in West Virginia, specifically the 2nd Congressional District there. We here in Georgia, we have some similarities as far as the demographics go when it comes to kind of, I guess, where you would say partisan leanings with a lot of this. So it's your folks are our folks. And we really think that by bringing you on to our show here with this, we're really helping not only to get you more national exposure with a lot of what we're doing, but also really drive a message in your district and really help you get your message out as much as possible, which quite frankly, if I were living there, you would already have my vote based on,
without a doubt.
yeah, just based on your status with your resume that you have. But in speaking of a resume with that, would you mind kind of giving us what your assumed political resume would be?
Sure. So I have I've been in the cybersecurity business for about 26 years, and I started off in the United States Army as a U.S. Army soldier, and then I got out of that, and I ended up going to work for the United States Navy as a civil servant, and then eventually for Mar4 Cyber, which is the Marine Corps, and so. And then in between some of there, I was a contractor with DISA and with other government agencies. But most of my career, I would say, was probably with the U.S. Navy and as a civil servant. And so I've got a very good, strong background. I'm a subject matter expert in cybersecurity. While I was with Mar4 Cyber, I was part of a cyber protection team. Deployed to national missions. So we were detached to NSA, and our job was to go after hackers hacking our national critical infrastructure. So most of my career was spent in the Pacific Theater. So I've got a very strong knowledge of China, in particular how they attack us, through cyber warfare, and I understand, a lot of their tactics, techniques, and procedures. And so that's kind of my career. A couple years back, I decided to start my own cybersecurity company. This was right at the height of, Biden administration pushing the COVID requirements and the vaccines. I decided I did not want to be a guinea pig again. I already did that in the U.S. Army, and so I started my own company, and it has been very successful. So I do have a contract that I do with the government, but also I've done a lot of election integrity work through my company, and we've had some pretty high profile cases as well. So that's, in a nutshell, that's my background. Now I ended up going from Mar4 Cyber after I got all of my training at the FANX 2, which is a training facility for the NSA. I went through their cyber core program and got trained up in some really high speed training on how to do hacking and that sort of thing. That once I put that on my resume, I got hit with a job offer for a federal contractor who had a contract with the FBI, and I went through a panel interview, and I got hired. It was a very exciting time. I was looking forward to it. Had a lot of respect for the FBI at that time, and it was really kind of the highlight of my career. They offered me twice my salary, so it was kind of hard to turn down. And I went in there to, basically architect and deploy their vulnerability management system, and across all of their field offices as well as, their satellite offices. So it was a pretty big deal. While I was there, unfortunately, I walked into the office one day and overheard a conversation I wish I hadn't heard. But it was a conversation about covering up crimes committed by Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and her associates related to money laundering, securities and exchange fraud, public corruption, and terrorism financing. And the words like treason were being thrown around, and words like this is so big it could bring down the government were being said. I didn't believe it immediately. I thought, oh, this is just a rumor. But I did feel the responsibility to look into it. And so I accessed the FBI's classified database, went into it and looked for these files that somebody had seen. And they had said that they had seen transcripts of a conversation. I never did find those transcripts. However, I did find the documents that were the evidence. And it was about 300 and something pages worth of financial records. These were FinCENT Treasury, suspicious activity reports with analyst notes showing all of these crimes, showing the entire money trail. And I ended up at first thinking, excuse me, at first I thought, that they were going to indict Hillary, because these all were out of three major field offices: the Washington field office, the Little Rock, Arkansas field office, and the New York field office. They had these files had case numbers. They were investigating. They had analyst notes that gave a high probability of these crimes and with their codes. And so I thought, okay, no, they're doing their job, so I'm just going to sit and wait. And then you had at that point, Comey came out a little bit longer after that. Comey came out and gave that speech in front of the J. Edgar Hoover building, saying that no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against Hillary Clinton, for her email server. And during the speech, if you'll remember, right at the beginning of the speech, he basically laid out a litany of crimes that she had committed, essentially under the Espionage Act. And one of those was that they had found 7 email chains on her email server in her bathroom that had SAPs, or what we call SAPs, but it's a special access program. And for people who don't know what that is, I've held a top secret clearance for 26 years. So what a SAP is it is a special access program. It's a special compartmentalized information that is only in a SCIF, which is a secure or secret compartmentalized information facility. So it's basically like a big box with no windows and, with a man trap and, all kinds of added security and things like that. But it's basically where, our most top secret, documents, and some people will say above top secret, but basically these are programs that are specialized. You have to be read on to them to even see them. So even if you have a top secret clearance, you don't get to see them. You have to have authority and be read onto the program, sign non-disclosure agreements and things like that. So the fact that these were found on a personal server, that in and of itself, the question was never answered. How did they get on her server? Because you would have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that information out of a SCIF, let alone to put it on a server. So, when he said no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against her, I knew at that moment that they were going to cover it up. This was there's no way. And so I spent a good amount of time, praying and thinking about how to blow the whistle. The problem that I had was all of my chain of command was involved. So Comey, he was involved because he was the deputy director at the time that the Uranium-1 stuff had gone down, and a lot of these documents were pertaining to stuff that had occurred previously. So Comey was involved. The intelligence community Inspector General Michael Atkinson, who was the guy who I would normally go through with this stuff as a contractor, the WPA, the Whistleblower Protection Act, didn't cover me, but the ICWPA did. And the ICWA was okay, but it did not protect you against reprisal. But I couldn't go through the IG because he was involved. His name was on some of these documents. There was also the fact that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, had recused himself from all things Russia and Hillary Clinton, which meant that it would have to be reviewed by the Deputy Attorney General, which was Rod Rosenstein, and his name was all over these because he was the U.S. attorney involved of the case that investigated Rosatom, the Russian energy company. And finally, the other person that was involved in this was Mueller. Mueller, the very one who investigated Trump. He was the deputy, or he was the FBI director at the time that all this stuff went down. So I had 2 major disclosures. The first one was directly, I decided I couldn't go through my chain of command. And so I ended up going directly to, I made got a liaison, somebody basically to act as a liaison for me to reach out and connect with Devin Nunes's office, because he was the chairman of the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. They were investigating Uranium-1 and, pay to play and all of that. So I had a clandestine meeting. I carried out, about 300 or so classified documents out of the FBI and brought them to his senior staff member who was authorized to, take classified information. I briefed him for about 3 hours as we drove around Washington, D.C., and gave him a thumb drive. And then he asked me if I would go back in and get more information. And specifically what he wanted was they were very interested in uranium-1 and the fact that uranium-1 was sold off to a Russian energy company called Rosatom. And the concern is that uranium-1 processed 20% of the U.S. Uranium supply.
Yeah.
And so what he specifically asked me to go back and find was there any evidence, any intelligence reports that indicated that the FBI knew that Rosatom was involved in trying to infiltrate our uranium supply chain, or that the Russians were using, Rosatom to infiltrate our uranium supply chain. And I went in and I did find a document. I did find an intelligence report. All of these documents, by the way, these are what are talked about on page 78 of the Durham report. The financial documents and the intelligence report. This is what it's talking about. I never spoke to Durham, but I know that he got a hold of my documents because he visited with the IG Horowitz and he got them. So what ended up happening is I came out of the FBI on my last day there with the intelligence reports, and I put everything, like all the stuff I had before and the intelligence report on there. And then he had given me a code to be able to communicate encrypted with him over my phone over an app. And when I got out, I tried reaching out to him, and I got nothing. I had no communications come back. So wow. I ended up stuck, twisting in the wind with a classified thumb drive, and so I ended up having to take it home, put it in my safe. And then I contacted my buddy and I said, hey, man, I need a lawyer like right now. And so I was in pretty bad shape. So I ended up eventually, my lawyer and I, we ended up going through the full-blown Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act. I ended up getting recognized as a ICWPA whistleblower under the DOJ IG Michael Horowitz. He turned out to be a stand-up man. Jeff Sessions refused to even look at my documentation. He refused to give it a credibility rating. He didn't want to look at it. And so Horowitz ended up coming back to my attorney and saying, look, I feel like this stuff is an urgent concern under national security. And so if you're willing, I'm willing to give it a credibility rating on my own. And so we said, absolutely. So he can take these documents. He has access to the FBI now. He can go verify. They're serialized documents. So he can go verify that everything is legit. So he did. He ended up, then he gave us permission to take it to both the House and the Senate Intel committees. So we did. And we took it to the House first. And they came back and asked me if I was willing to testify. I was dealing with basically accusing the senior leadership of the FBI of obstruction of justice. I was, also going after Hillary for the crimes that she committed and Russian intelligence agents. So my answer to them when they asked me if I would testify was not no, but hell no. I didn't want some Democrat to leak it out of the committee and then have, a target on my back by some rogue agent or something. So
without a doubt.
They don't call it Hillary for nothing.
That's right. So I ended up refusing, and then they got cold feet and did not want to take the information from me. So we went back to Horowitz, and Horowitz had allowed me to take a code name and keep my anonymity. And so my lawyer had assigned me the code name MC POTA, MCPOTA. And in fact, when he told me that, I was like, seriously? Look, I'm probably only going to do this once in my life. You couldn't pick a cooler name than that,
Yeah.
And he goes, oh no, he says, you'll love this name. You'll love it. MC POTA. And I go, what does it stand for? And he says, making communists pay out the ass. So I was like, all right, okay, I like that name. I'll keep it.
We can roll with that.
He was, a little backstory on him. He was, grew up in Cuba. And I think he was like maybe 14 or something like that when they moved here to America. Him and his father. His father was a Cuban dissident and had been thrown in one of Castro's work camps. And so he had an absolute disdain for communists. So hence the name MC POTA.
Yeah. No, those who've lived through it generally do.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
So eventually we got them to accept it. We went back to Horowitz. Horowitz did say, he said, look, ask them if they'll take it if I deliver it. And so they said, of course. And so he had his senior staff member deliver it both to the House and the Senate. We learned later that the Senate never did receive it. The Senate Intel Committee, whoever their liaison was, just shoved it in a drawer and forgot about it. I found that out later because, after we turned everything in, we had about 4 months later, I got raided by the FBI, and they went after my family pretty hard. It was a really tough time, and it was at that time for about 2 years, I think I had FISA warrants out on me, and they were spying on me and surveilling me and going after my kids. And that's kind of where I drew the line. Once they started targeting my kids to try to find a way to, weak spot in my, to come after me, I got sick of it. And I ended up going to the chairman of the judiciary and speaking to, that was Lindsey Graham at the time, but I spoke to his investigative counsel. And within 2 weeks after that, all of the harassment stopped. So,
good.
But yeah, it was a tough time. And, and I ended up eventually we left Maryland. I couldn't live in that house anymore. There was too many bad memories, too much trauma involved with it, not just for me, but for I have an autistic son who was there when the FBI raided, and it really did a lot of damage, in terms of just anxiety.
Yeah.
And so we left. We moved here to West Virginia, where we've got our rights. That was another thing that really ticked me off was even after I was poisoned twice, and I had multiple death threats, and I ended up going and trying to get a concealed carry, and they denied me. And so I ended up eventually I did get one because of my clearance, which was a weird loophole, but it was like, whatever happened to shall not infringe,
Yeah.
So I wanted to live somewhere where I had my rights and where, the Constitution was respected. And so I up and sold my house and moved to West Virginia about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. So that brings us up to date. And there's a lot of other stuff that happened. But I mean, like I gave you guys the Reader's Digest version. There was a lot of miraculous things that happened. Clearly God intervening, like the fact that there was a woman who I didn't know from Adam who paid for all of my legal fees, which came out to $198,000, by the way. There was also, kind of some prophetic stuff that happened as well that made me know for certain that I was doing the right thing and that I was right where God wanted me to be. And that played a huge role in me being able to be, have the courage, I think, to do what I needed to do. So we moved here and I was enjoying life. Like I said, I started my own company and it's been successful. Last summer, I was laying on my boat and my job now, I work from 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. and I work from home and I get off. And occasionally I might have some side work or something, but most of the time, I try not to do that in the summer. And so, I got on my Tri-Tune 24-foot boat and got out on the Potomac, deep water Potomac, and just chilling out and relaxing, loving life every day that I possibly could.
Wow.
I mean, if I could live on my boat and not, I would much rather just live on my boat. I love it. But yeah. I was laying there and looking up at the sky and just thinking to myself, man, I finally arrived. I was making more money than I was even making at the FBI. I mean, like God had totally restored everything to us and things were going great. And I remember thinking, man, I hope this never ends. And as soon as I said that, I heard that still small voice in my head say, son, enjoy this now because it's not going to last. I have more work for you to do. And so I was,
he was just getting ready.
My heart sank. And so I knew at that point something was up, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't have any idea that it was political in nature or anything. But I ended up in November. Like I had mentioned, I had worked on some pretty high profile cases in cyber, specifically related to election integrity and election security. And so I was very familiar with a lot of the methods that cheating had gone on. And and I was watching, as things, kind of came about during the last election, and I was really just frustrated and depressed about, what happened in Arizona and what happened in Pennsylvania and other places. And I just, so I ended up just praying, and I said, God, I pray that you would raise up righteous men and women to run for office in 2024. And then I heard that still small voice again that said, what about you? And of course, my first response was, oh, hey, hold on a minute, God. Haven't I given enough to my country? Why do I got to do this again? I didn't want to put my family out there, and not only that, but I started my own business and things are going good. And it's like, why do I want to mess any of that up? But I've learned never to say no to God. And so, I'm a praying man, and I just, and I learned that, you see all these examples in the Bible, people negotiating with God. So I thought, well, I'll try that. So I said, all right, God, well, I don't see any path forward, because Alex Mooney had just won re-election, and, he had a conservative voting record, and I'm not going to go up against an incumbent. And so I couldn't go for any state office, because the state office, you have to like basically move for a part of the year to Charleston, and me being a working contractor, it had to be all or nothing. I couldn't do a part-time thing. So, but even still, like Congress, it would be a $70,000 pay cut. And I'm just like, but I knew I could do it. But I ended up just, praying and saying, all right, God, look, if you make a path, then I will run for office, but I don't see a path. And so I thought I bought myself like 6 or 8 years, by saying that. 2 days later, I'm typing in Alex Mooney's name onto my computer, because I had to reach out to him, his office, about a matter that my company was dealing with. And I'm typing in his name, and it pops down the little Google thing, and it says 2 seconds ago, Alex Mooney announces he's running for the Senate against Joe Manchin in 2024. And my head sank, and I was like, oh man. So yeah, he called me on it. And so here I am. I'm running for office, and I ended up putting in my paperwork pretty much immediately. And I do believe that, when God calls you to do something, you got to give it your all. And so I am running to win. I'm not running to lose. Now, it's up to the Lord as to whether that happens or not. But I think when you look at my life and you look at the things that have happened in it in the last 5 years, especially, it seems very interesting, considering the stuff that's going on right now, whether it's the FBI whistleblowers that are in the news and how they've been mistreated and targeted, and how the weaponization of our federal government against the American people. I was a victim, I believe, of FISA misuse and abuse. I was a whistleblower that was targeted by the FBI, or whether it's the fact that we may end up at war with China. And I have a very good knowledge and understanding of that enemy. Most of my career in the military has actually been in the Pacific Theater. And even when I was with CPT, a cyber protection team, our major advanced persistent threats that we monitored were Chinese. And in fact, when you look at the critical infrastructure, all of the food manufacturing, the train derailments, even the dairy farm that exploded the other day, all of these things have something in common. And I have a lot of knowledge about something called ICS hacking, or industrial, these industrial control systems. Basically, they've allowed for automation, right, which is a good thing, because now instead of some guy having to drive all over the place to go and plug in something to update and do things, now they can all manage it remotely. The problem is a lot of ICS and SCADA systems have been done in a way that security was an afterthought. And so this was something that was a big concern to the NSA. It's why, we had a lot of missions that were oriented around, national critical infrastructure. And so when I look and see what's in the news with all of the, the manufacturing plants, the oil refineries or the chemical refineries, and the, things like even water treatment plants, the train derailments, all of these things all have that same commonality to them. And so I think that they are more likely than anything. I think we're looking at sabotage through, cyber warfare. These techniques and tactics I know about, and I've been trained in. So I do have some concerns, about where we're at. But basically, I swore the oath 3 times to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so my campaign's really focused on a few major, kind of things. And one of those things is restoring our constitutional rights and, basically dealing with this issue of tyranny within our own government. It is also about strengthening our national security, which is at the weakest point that it's ever been in my lifetime. I don't believe we're even, prepared or ready to fight a war, on 2 fronts. And then the last part is about economic freedom for West Virginia and really for all Americans. And by deregulating and defunding a lot of these, federal initiatives that really prevent the states from having economic freedom. So those are my priorities.
So that kind of leads me into
there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah, and one of them being so we're going to take the thought process here of the fact that you have already been elected into this position, this seat, and we're going to essentially refer to you as the current member of Congress and kind of ask you some questions about what you would do as a member of Congress with these issues. And the first one that really comes to mind, and you were talking about having a lot of the economic freedoms related to West Virginia. I know West Virginia, a lot of the economy is based on mining and coal. And I know the EPA plays a major role in that and really regulating a lot of the things that have to do with the environmental protections that are instilled on just about anything anywhere. So part of this most recent debt ceiling this debt ceiling agreement that had just been released, part of that was rolling back some of the regulations in regard to the national regulation for environmental protections. So, and essentially from what they're trying to make it sound like there is that it cuts a lot of the red tape and makes it easier to get permitting for more environmental areas to allow for industrialization and things along that nature to come through. But you're seeing a major pushback against this just from every walk of life or across. I know in our district, and I would assume so in the district that you will be representing as well, just simply because
he means the debt ceiling, not the EPA.
Well, yes, I mean the debt ceiling agreement. So if you're getting a lot of pushback with that, but part of that will directly benefit your district there. Is that something that you would vote in favor of, knowing that this would ultimately help out your district?
So the first thing I want to mention is that when I first started going out and looking into running for office, and I was talking to I talked to a few delegates. There was a delegate that told me, he said, you just need to focus on Martinsburg, Berkeley County, Jefferson County, focus on Parkersburg and Wheeling, and don't just skip everything else. Don't waste your time in these small population counties. That actually really pissed me off, to be honest with you. I got a little upset and offended by it. And my attitude was that, look, I'm not running to be a politician. I'm running to be a representative, and that word means something. Amen. So on that note, just to kind of start with that, my goal, the only people that I am beholden to, as a politician, is the people of West Virginia, first and foremost. It's kind of like America first, but West Virginia first also, right? So the people who elect me are the people who I've got to make sure that their interests are being met. Now, I have a big problem with with this debt ceiling bill that just passed, or that is coming out of committee. I have and it is a complicated issue. The problem that we have right now is we have an administration. We have a divided Congress. We have a Congress that there's Democrats that are in control of the Senate, and which means that we're not going to get everything that we want right now. But the one thing that I did like in it, and I will speak to this, that there was a couple of things. So one you mentioned is the rolling back of EPA rules. That is extremely important for West Virginia, and not just West Virginia, but also for America, because when we look at energy and you look at what's happened, so West Virginia has a lot of natural gas, a lot. We have a lot of coal. We also have a lot of oil, and the fact is that we have enough natural resources below the ground and above the ground in terms of like wood and forest, that we really have everything we need to be self-sufficient as a state. There's no reason for us to be a taker state or to be a welfare state where we take more money from the federal government than we pay into it. But that's the way it is right now. But that's the way it's always been because of Democrat policies and the Democrats that ran this state for so long. Starting with Rockefeller, and so they basically ran things so that they could get handouts from the federal government. And I don't agree with that. One of the things that got passed in this bill that I do like and I do support is there's a natural gas pipeline that has been approved as part of this deal. For that reason, honestly, I would have to vote for it, because this natural gas pipeline will create over 5,000 jobs for West Virginians. Now, does that mean that that I agree with everything in this bill? Absolutely not. In fact, as soon as we get both, a Republican Senate and a Republican House, I would be voting very differently and using the power and leveraging the power that we have to be able to, to get some things that we want. Namely, we need them to cut spending like big time. And the biggest way to cut spending, number one, is we defund half these agencies, including the EPA, including the IRS, and quite frankly, the FBI at this point. I think that, I think their reputation, is damaged, beyond repair. And so I think that defunding the agencies is really the main thing that, needs to happen and can happen. But again, it's not going to happen, with a Democrat Senate. We got to have both the Republicans and in both houses. And so that's one thing. And this is why, by the way, people need to get out and vote in the next election. They got to make sure they get out and vote in the primaries so that they can get candidates who are going to hold to that.
Completely agree. We talk about this a lot on the show about the fact of any form of debt ceiling agreement currently. I just don't see how that doesn't stop the Fed from raising interest rates, because all it is going to adding to government spending, which is just going to increase inflation.
Yeah.
To that point,
and there's some solutions that I have for that, and they're not things necessarily that as a congressman that I would be responsible for. But as we saw with President Trump, he led by example. Even before he took office, he was out there making deals with companies, getting them to come back to the United States, asking them to move into certain states. There were things that he didn't have to do as president, but he did it anyways. He made deals, and worked with different states to bring businesses back into them and things like that. I would absolutely use the bully pulpit of my office to do that same thing for West Virginia. What I found is that.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what I found is that there are issues that the state legislature needs to take up. But oftentimes, I don't know if it's just, a lack of creativity, or if it is a lack of will, or what the deal is, but they just don't do it. And so one of the things that we absolutely have to do, I believe this is critically important in West Virginia, is we need our own gold and silver mint, and as legal tender. The reason I say this is for a couple of reasons. One, you already mentioned it, inflation. This won't necessarily help with inflation, except in the fact that, if we are able, because there's going to be a lot of people still paid, by in U.S. dollars, or paid, in, which is even worse, the central bank digital currency, which is being rolled out, by the Federal Reserve.
Don't get
But
him
the
started
fact-
on that one.
Yeah, well, the fact is that people are worried about credit cards being used to monitor gun purchases and ammo and things, and who you donate money to and stuff like that. I think it's a very important issue that for our own privacy, we need to absolutely cut off this digital currency, and we need to cut it off at the knees. And the best way we can do that is to have competition and to actually, the Constitution does allow the states to mint gold and silver. Texas just voted on some similar legislation. The problem is that having gold and silver that's just kept as like, gold bars or gold coins and things like that, which you have to take to a dealer to sell, you can't use it as legal tender. But we absolutely need a legal tender system that does utilize gold and silver. This would give us actually a way of being able to, do purchases and things like that within the state. And I think there are other states that could get on board with this. Hopefully Florida, definitely Texas is on board with it. I think a lot of other conservative states could get on board with something like this. So the question becomes, how do you get the gold and silver into the state? Because it's not like we got lots of gold and silver laying around. Well, it's real simple. There's a lot of gold and silver out there in the world. And West Virginia exports $7.9 billion worth of coal, gas, natural gas, and oil, as well as wood and beef and all kinds of other products. We could say, to those companies that are, dealing in those products overseas to say, hey, look, you better ask the Chinese when you're sending them our coal that you want to be paid in gold, or in silver, because you're going to have to pay your taxes in gold and silver. So that would be one way of kind of forcing the issue. I think that you would quickly fill up the state treasury with gold and silver, and then you would need a state trust bank, which would basically allow for people to be able to immediately convert their CBDC or US dollars into this gold and silver mint. And and the thing is, a lot of these ideas, these aren't things that came from me, Nate Cain. As I'm out there talking to people, I've probably talked to well over 5,000 people in the last 3 months. And as I'm out there talking to people, I get people that come up to me afterwards and they ask me things, just like you guys are doing. They ask me questions about how would I deal with this? How would I deal with that? And when I don't have a satisfactory answer, they give me, what they've, been thinking about and what they've been, writing up. And so this gold and silver thing was actually something that came from a constituent. And he brought this up to me, and then I brought it up to somebody else, another constituent, and then he said, "Hey, I'm glad you're bringing that up. Let me show you something." And he showed me a way to overcome another issue with that, which is how do you deal with smaller denominations? You can't, you're not going to be able to, a coin that's maybe about that big, that's pure silver, right? That's probably $5 or $6, maybe $10. And so you can't deal with the smaller denominations with that. So how do you deal with something that's, like a tiny little amount of silver? Well, you could press that into, an amalgamate coin where it's right in the center and it's stamped on it what the weight of it is. And that would be one way of doing it. And so a lot of great people are bringing these ideas up to me, but that's one issue that I think at the state level needs to happen, and I would push for, use my bully pulpit to do. Another one would be look at, those of us that know the Bible, right? We know the stories about Joseph and how he stored up the grain and all of that, for hard times ahead. And, we have massive amounts of natural gas, oil, and coal. And, why don't we have our own state strategic energy fund, right? Our state strategic energy reserve.
Exactly.
We could have everything we need so that if we end up with a crazy president like, Biden, who manipulates the energy markets and causes, energy prices to skyrocket in the middle of winter, poor people and people that are on fixed incomes, the elderly, we would have the ability to maintain pricing for them that would be, within their budgets. These are things that I think that we need to, we have to be prepared for, and we need to be thinking about, not wasting money on stupid things that, don't make any sense. And a perfect example of that is they gave $290 million. Now, when I say they, I mean our state legislature gave $290 million to a company called Form Energy up in Weirton, which is in the northern panhandle. And the idea behind this is, it's going to be great, for the economy. We're going to, build all these high tech, climate change, green energy jobs up there. And the problem is this $290 million, when you really think about, what they're offering, they're saying 750 jobs. Okay. Something doesn't add up.
No,
we gave a $5 million loan to this is the West Virginia Economic Development Authority. Gave a $5 million loan to a company called Mountaintop Beverages to move into Morgantown and to make soda pop, something everybody uses and something that, has stood the test of time. $5 million, they got to create 350 jobs. Okay. Now, if you took the $290 million that was given to Form Energy, then you would have, and you divided that by $5 million, that would be 58 different companies throughout West Virginia that could have been given a loan, a forgivable loan to, to move into the state. Or what about the people who already are here working, already paying
that want to start?
What about people that want to expand their business here in West Virginia? That's part of the problem with these economic development packages. It does nothing to offer, it up to these people that are here. But they could have done that, and you would talk 58 different companies. If only half of those companies succeeded in creating 350 jobs, you're talking over 10,000 new jobs for West Virginia, not a mere 750. Then you take and you add in the factor that that Form Energy is made up of Bill Gates, George Soros, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Ma. I mean, literally the worst of the worst and far left policies and ESG and the CIE, all of this, wokeism crap. Mm-hmm. They're up there, basically. And then on top of that, you got BlackRock's an investor. You got the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that's an investor. I mean, you've got all of this investment on this company that intends to change, change the working environment for West Virginia.
It's like a hostile takeover of the state.
Exactly. And it's sitting up in a point at the very tippy top of West Virginia, Panhandle in Weirton, a town that has Ohio right next to it and Pennsylvania right on the other side of it. Literally, there's no guarantee that any of those jobs go to West Virginians. I asked one of the delegates, I said, do any of these jobs go to West Virginians? Is there any guarantee that at least half of them? He said, no. I couldn't believe what I heard. So this kind of stuff, it's got to stop in our state. We've got to actually be smart about how we spend our money. They might as well have taken this. By the way, they've never created one of these, what they call iron air batteries of the size and scale of what they're talking about. In theory, it's supposed to work, but there's no guarantee of anything working. So they might as well have taken that money, gone to Vegas and put it on, the roulette table on Black 25. And, that to me, that's about the same risk level. And apparently the banks think the same thing because they wouldn't give them a loan. So, these are the kinds of things that happen, as much as there's corruption at the federal government, there's corruption also in the local state government as well. But at the state government, I think it's a little easier to get rid of some of these, some of these delegates, some of these politicians, that, are not doing the right thing for the people. Mm-hmm. And so again, I go back to how are these people representing the people? The fact is they made this deal behind closed doors. They signed all these non-disclosure agreements that they wouldn't talk about it. And they did all that saying, oh, well, we had to do that because we were in competition with other states. And if we didn't do it, they wouldn't talk to us and show us anything. So, but here's the problem. All of the people, their constituents, they didn't get any voice in this. They didn't get any say in it. They weren't even told about it until the deal was done. So that kind of stuff's got to stop. So, the good thing on this note, on this debt ceiling thing, I've made my comments about it that I would vote for, but that's only based on what I know. The fact is that one of the rules that the holdouts within the Freedom Caucus did, one of the things that they were able to get accomplished was a guarantee that no bills would be, forced onto us without, I think, 72 hours to be able to review them. So we're going to see we're going to see how the sausage was made. We're going to see what's in the sausage. And, depending on how bad it is or how good it is, that's going to ultimately, make the difference. So I'm curious to see what's going to be in this. I may have a totally different opinion, once I read what's in it. And
Yeah.
I feel the exact same way.
It's 99 pages right now.
Yeah.
As of the start of this right here, I'm not sure if it's even going to make it out of rules committee to begin with. You have 3 holdouts on the rules committee that have, you have 2 that are definitively just flat out said, absolutely not, we're not voting for this whatsoever. And then you have Thomas Massey, who's indicated and previously has also indicated that, this could be something that he may consider, but at the same time, knowing his background and his history and where he believes in and how he votes a lot of this, I don't really see there's going to be much of a chance of that. And without those 3 votes, it doesn't.
I like Thomas Massey a lot. He's a very strict, constitutionalist, and so I do tend to agree with him.
Lives on his farm. His farm is completely 100% self-contained as far as energy goes. It produces everything on its own. He lives almost completely off the grid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, that's.
I think that's what most Americans need to get back to.
That would be something.
And I have to make this point because I feel like this was a great point that you made, because the original intent of digital currency was to be decentralized, and I think the idea really goes back to the core of the fact that we just need a more internal, decentralized bartering system, to where if I have a good or a product, we can agree on payment. Whether it be food, whether it be some form of, exchange of services, or, whether it's a gold or a decentralized form of currency. I think what you just said about going back to having state trust is a brilliant idea.
Well, I will say he's made the absolute perfect case for any argument in regard to really the expansion of states' rights. I mean, everything that he's talked about with this, it quite frankly, the vast majority of it all brings up the 10th Amendment. Anything not included or specifically delineated to the federal government is given to the states, and I believe that has been completely overreached.
So the Commerce Clause actually has a very specific. There is a very specific phrase or statement in there that says, while the states don't have any right to create currency or paper currency, we can't do any kind of. It says that there's an exception. There's an exception for gold and silver mint. So we can do coinage in gold and silver. That's all that we're legally allowed to do under the Constitution. But you can do a lot with that, because gold and silver is worth a lot, and so you can actually. In fact, the problem has been up to this point how do you make the denomination small enough? I mean, people aren't going to carry around, something that's that big, unless you have a coin, right, that has a piece pressed into it, and that would actually work.
I mean, there's coins around the world that look like that.
Well, and that's part of it too, right? Like, look at Texas, like you mentioned beforehand. Look at Arizona. There are mints out there that already print bullion. For coin collectors like myself, out of gold and silver, just different delineations of it. Now we're just saying that, the state is giving a price to this and saying that you can exchange this within there. That goes back to how the original intent of what crypto was before the central banking system crashed it and said, hey, we're going to start taking this over so we can track your payments, which is the complete opposite of where we began with it.
Now there are some some issues that would have to be overcome. One of those is that silver and gold prices can be manipulated, and so you would almost need a cartel, of multiple states saying, hey, we're going to hold that, we're going to determine the value of this because it is currency within, that it's legal tender that can be used for buying and selling, in our states and in between states. So we're going to all be on the same sheet of music. We're going to peg our gold and silver prices, value to, whatever index, or maybe they create their own index. I don't know.
Yeah. And we don't want to get in the same situation that we're in.
That's right. Now. That's right. And the biggest thing is it's like that. To me, what I love about it is like the quintessential double barrel middle finger to the, Federal Reserve. It basically tells them you don't own this anymore.
It's always great to do that. So I'll tell you what, let's jump back in or jump on with another topic that I know that and just hearing a lot of the, I guess, things that you've said here over our interview with us, where do you lie on the Second Amendment? Do you lie between, states have the right or states have the right to regulate firearms and what they can have within their own infrastructures, to the federal government, or government has the right to regulate, as opposed to citizens should be able to park tanks in their front yard? I can go ahead and tell you, I am looking for the tank to get in my front yard, because that is where I fall with that.
I'm not a tank in the front yard person, but
so let me share with you something. Or actually, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
When they come up with gun laws, do criminals follow law?
No.
Okay, so if they come up with a gun law, who does that gun law ultimately end up hurting?
The only
the law-abiding citizen.
Follow the
law-abiding
yes.
citizens. That's right. Now, so to me, gun laws are pointless and stupid because the criminals don't follow them anyways. And now I would rather see I'd much rather see an armed citizenry, and apparently the current Supreme Court seems to feel the same way. Based on their recent rulings over the last few years. I am a Second Amendment absolutist. Okay, I will tell you right now. The way that I look at it is, the purpose of the Second Amendment was not for hunting. It was not even for personal self-defense. That was not the issue of it. The purpose of the Second Amendment was so that we could defend ourselves against a tyrannical government and take it over if we felt that we needed to overthrow the government. Now, this is a controversial statement to make in a lot of circles, but that is the actual language that it's given. Now, I'm not talking about vigilantism. I am talking about organized militias and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
In that, one could argue that an organized militia would be the state National Guard and reserve units that fall under the command of the governor. But the fact is, I don't think that they ever meant for guns to only be in the hands of those that are in the National Guard or something like that. That's ridiculous. Now, I think it goes beyond guns, and I think this is an important thing to remember. And so this is going to get a little philosophical here, but the way I look at it, and this is coming from somebody who's been a war fighter and been somebody that's been working for the Defense Department, like I said, for almost all of my 26 years in cyber. And there are multiple domains of warfare. Okay, there's information warfare, there's cyber warfare. There's some types of warfare that we've made illegal, even for the U.S. government, right? Germ warfare, biological warfare, that sort of thing. I would argue that I don't think my next door neighbor should be able to own a nuke, because if that nuke has an accident, it's going to cause, damage into my yard, right? But I think that it's absolutely the right of the people to have their own intelligence agencies, to have their own, so like if I, as a private citizen, wanted to start an intelligence agency that spies on the United States government, why shouldn't they be able to? Because the fact is that when you, again, looking at what arms is all about, it's about defense against a tyrannical government. We know that the government has been spying on us. A lot of what I'm running on has to do with putting that into check. And I think that there are some things that need to happen in Congress in order to do that. But one of the things that could put things into check would be if we had our own intelligence services that were essentially looking at those looking at us. We need to know, how are they spying on us? What are they doing? How are they violating our constitutional rights? There's also cyber warfare. Now, again, you can build a tool without using it, right? People have guns all the time, and they have them for, when the shit hits the fan, right? They're not meant, I've got a lot of weapons, and some of them are loaded. I don't keep them that way because I intend to or want to kill another human being. In fact, I hope, to God, and I pray to God, I never have to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want to be in a position to where I thought to myself, oh man, I wish I had my gun. You know, that's why I carry. You know, I go into a mall, I want to know that I can defend the people around me. And also, if our government ever, you know, some people might say, oh, Nate, you have an excessive number of guns and an excessive amount of ammo. You know, my thinking is, you know, if the you know, the apocalypse occurs, right, you know, ammo is going to become a very prized commodity, you know, and might be something useful to trade for medicine or food or seeds or something like that. I also look at the guns that I have. I've got a variety of guns, and the reason I have them is for different tactical situations. You know, I don't know, you know, what's going to happen. Maybe we end up, you know, who knows? Maybe it's not our government that we got to worry about. Maybe China invades, and maybe I got Chinese troops, you know, coming down, you know, down my my street. You know, I want to be able to take them out from a distance, and so I've got distance weapons. You know, if they get in close, I've got close, you know, range weapons, shotguns and scatter guns and things like that, that will, you know, so, but these are things that I think about because I've been trained in, you know, tactical war fighting and that sort of thing. So I'm not afraid of guns. The biggest problem with most people is they're afraid of them.
Yeah.
Okay. And the truth is, you know, when you first drive a car on the freeway, I think, I don't know about you, but the first time I drove a car on the freeway, I was scared.
I was nervous, admittedly.
I was in Los Angeles, okay? So I was very scared.
Okay, yeah. No,
I got on the highway.
Well, I don't know. I was on 75, so I was in Atlanta.
But you know, after driving a car for a long time, I don't have any fear anymore of getting into a car. You know, when you walk down the street, okay, when people think, oh, you know, we need to restrict guns from people because they might kill somebody. Well, the gun's not going to jump out and kill somebody by themselves. It's going to be the person behind the gun that does that. But we don't have that same unreasonable fear walking down the street. You know, somebody could look at you as you're, you know, walking on the sidewalk and go, oh, I'm going to kill this guy, and run you over with their car because they just feel like it. But generally, people don't do that. You know, generally people tend to stay within their lanes and not do that. Occasionally there's an accident, just like occasionally there's an accident with guns, you know, but generally, you know, people are good. They don't want to kill people. They don't want to go to jail for the rest of their lives. They don't want to get the death penalty. That's one of the reasons I believe in the death penalty, is I think we need those checks there, that when somebody's thinking, oh, you know, I'm really mad at this guy, they don't just go off and shoot him, because they know they're going to get the death penalty, or they're going to go to jail for, you know, the rest of their life. So I would say that
I would look at building in express lanes in regard to the death penalty. I think that would be a much stronger deterrent. I guess would be a good way.
Yeah. Well, a perfect example is of that. When you have somebody that you catch them on film committing the crime, why do they get an appeal? You know, I mean, there's some, you know, I get it. I think that sometimes people don't have a fair trial and things like that. And believe me, our justice system is screwed up. A perfect example of that is January 6th. Yeah. Look at all these people that are sitting in jail that didn't commit any violent crime. And all they did was, you know, essentially exercise their First Amendment right to assemble and make their grievances known to the government. And because of that, you know, I don't even consider what they did trespassing, because the cops let them in. We have the video footage of it. They opened up the gates and let them in. They escorted, you know, some of these people around. And yet these people were forced into deals because the FBI overcharged them. They charged them and wouldn't allow for a change of venue so that they would be guaranteed to not get a fair trial. And, you know, and these people had to take deals, you know, and admit guilt to something that they didn't do. And that's the case in most of their cases. There's a few people who committed, you know, violence, but even those people, there's extenuating circumstances. I've seen video footage where you had these guys that were being peaceful, and then all of a sudden the cops start tossing, you know, start tossing down flashbang grenades. And then you see a total change of their attitude. And, you know, like they're carrying, one of them, the guy's carrying a thin blue line flag, and then the cops start throwing flashbangs at him. And so he takes the flag, tears it off, throws it on the ground, starts stomping on it, you know, clearly pissed off that they were there to support the cops, and now the cops are attacking him. So, you know, police brutality happens, you know, and I think that anybody who's in a position of authority and power that abuses that authority and power needs to be held to the highest letter of the law. So, which is why, by the way, one of the things that, so I know we're getting off track a little bit with 2A rights, but the bottom line is I'm 100% for Second Amendment rights. But onto this issue though of how do you hold these people accountable? Well, I think that currently, right now, you have a justice system that is broken. You have an FBI that is abusing their power. They are committing the crime of deprivation of rights under color of law, which carries a sentencing all the way up to life in prison and the death penalty for people who have deprived American citizens of their rights to where it caused them to lose their life. So I think that, I think that there's absolutely a need to invoke that. And I think that the current courts are not going to do it. So what Congress has to their, what they have available to them under Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, the Congress can formulate what's called an Article 1 tribunal to adjudicate agency issues. And I personally think that one of the biggest agency issues right now that needs to be adjudicated is this issue of abuse of power. You have, through the Twitter files, we've learned that the FBI was paying $3 million a year to Twitter in order to censor news stories. They were also telling them what accounts to shut down. We know from the last interview with Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk that multiple government agencies had access to Twitter and were actually spying, accessing people's DMs, their direct messages, spying on. That is a violation, of people's right to be free of, search and seizure without reasonable cause. We have a lot of things that are going on in the government. You have violations of due process in the case of January 6th. You have people being denied their right to a speedy trial, their right to counsel, their right to bail, which is actually mentioned in the Constitution, their right to be judged by their peers. There's a lot going on here where you see abuses of power by both the Department of Justice and the FBI. And I think these people need to be held accountable. And it's not just the FBI, it's many of the intelligence community agencies that are misusing these tools, which were intended for terrorists, not even in our country, but terrorists offshore. So I think these are things that we need a special court to address. If what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If the intelligence community has the FISC, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which allows for them to violate our rights all day long, I think we need a court that is specific to addressing the violations by the federal government, and it should come with some teeth. And so that's why I think the deprivation of rights under color of law should be the primary law that's used to go against them. If they violate that law, deprivation of rights, they should get the book thrown at them. So that's how I feel about
that. So one of the things that you were talking about there is, really pressing through and following through with the legal system here. And part of our legal system is that we have a way to legally come into our country. We have a legally defined border that is something that should be protected and maintained at all points in time, because it is literally the very definition of what makes a nation is a
defined border.
Exactly. Is a culture that has a defined border. We as a nation are being, at least in Jamie and I opinion, we are being invaded. We are being really, I would say in a sense, we're being defiled in a sense of that we are just having the worst of the worst coming over in most cases. A lot of these people are people who are coming out of mental facilities. They're coming out of jails. They're coming out of gangs. Oh, they're still in gangs, coming here to join the larger gang that has formed here in the United States. And we are simply just allowing them to walk through. And we're not even, we hadn't even really touched on the topic of the fact that our border has become so porous that known terrorists are walking across our borders almost weekly.
It's an international human trafficking conspiracy, if you want to
Biden heads up, and
that's what it really boils down to. Is when you track the entire thing. When you track the entire thing and how they are giving these temporary visas, amnesty cards, all these different things, and how they're tailoring it versus via country, it is human trafficking at its core. I would like to get your opinion on this and how you would want to try to address this issue from a West Virginia standpoint.
So this issue is extremely important to all Americans, and of course, especially to the border states, but really now it's beyond that. They're moving these, people all around the United States. I have an opinion that maybe is not, maybe would not be well liked by, some people in our country. But the reality is that these people that crossed over in our country, they broke the law. Now, I do not, I understand that we have some issues of, how do you got to have compassion on people who've, just trying to make a better life for themselves. I get it. I've heard some of their stories. I know that there's children that are unaccompanied. There's children with families that are here. What are you going to do? We have a process. The first and foremost, we got to finish the wall. That absolutely is a must. I would actually, I would authorize and I would encourage my fellow congressmen to authorize for the Army Corps of Engineers to go down and finish the wall. And I mean, they could do it probably fairly quick. The next thing that I would do is I would look at Mexico as a aider and abetter of criminal activity. So first things I would do is throw sanctions on Mexico, and I would basically tell them, we are going to put sanctions and major tariffs on all of your goods and services coming into our country. We're going to cut off all access, to your citizens to come to our country because you are aiding and abetting foreign terrorists, and not just that, but also, illegals that are trying to swamp our system and basically bring, our safety net, into, non-existence. So that would be one of the things that I would do, is really take a hard stance towards Mexico. I think a reasonable way of dealing with the problem of all the illegals that are here is if anybody gets arrested for a violent crime or a felony or violent crime. So even if it's a misdemeanor, but it's a violent crime, and you're here illegally, you're immediately deported, period. I think everybody can agree with that. I don't know anybody that would not agree with that. If you get caught trafficking in drugs, you're immediately deported, immediately. And then I think that what we do is we give a 1-year amnesty, and we say, look, you've got a year to get your crap together and go back to your country of origin. We basically open up the, south of the border, like what we had before, which was basically an intake, where people, it's a place where, where people who are claiming, to be refugees, they go there. And we would say, all right, you got a year to get your act together, go back to Mexico or go back to your country of origin, your choice. And we're not going to pay for your ticket. We're not going to give you a bus ride. We're not going to do any of that. But what we are going to do is we're going to come and arrest you, and we will deport you forcibly after a year. I think a year is plenty enough time for somebody to get their stuff together,
to start the paperwork for immigration process properly.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, you start all over at the end of the line. And if you want to come into this country, you're going back to your country, you're going back to Mexico, and you start all over again from the very get-go. And if we catch you a second time illegally coming into our country, you are never setting foot on our soil ever again, period. You'll be permanently banned from ever entering our country. I think we have to do this. The other thing too is that, a lot of this problem that we have is really the result of, we have a system that allows for, I think we just saw it in the news recently where there were veterans who've served our country that maybe have mental health issues or have, other issues, but they were living in hotels in New York City, and they were kicked out to make room for illegal aliens coming here. Now, the reason for that, and I actually called Mike Bost, Representative Mike Bost, who's the head of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I asked him about that. And he told me what was going on with that issue is that you had the Veterans Affairs was paying, this much, and immigration was paying that much. So as a businessman, you own a hotel.
Yeah.
It becomes an easy choice for them because we live in a capitalist society. So how in the heck that happened? It should never have happened. Why should illegals? And first off, why should illegals have any housing? Period. They shouldn't be given. They should not be given any housing. Now if somebody is a true refugee, a refugee doesn't mean that you couldn't afford or economically things were bad in your country. That's not a justification for being able to come to this country. When we give recognition to somebody for being a refugee, it's because there are threats to their life and their country due to like Cuba, for example. They want freedom and they've got problems with communists running their country. So I think we have to harden our laws. I think we actually have to come up with a plan. I do think that it's I don't believe in mass deportation off of the we're going to just go round everybody up. And I know that will never work.
Yeah.
People would see on film, because the Democrats would go and they would film, babies being pulled away from their mothers. And, next thing Republicans would be written off as, complete animals. But I think that it's fair to say, hey, you got a year. You got a year to leave our country and go back to your point of origin. And if you don't, then you better not get a speeding ticket. You better not ever have any reason, right? Because really, again, I believe in our Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. So if somebody is here and they're, they look like an illegal, that's not a justification for pulling them over. That's not a justification for asking them anything. They don't have a right to be asked about whether they have papers or not. I don't ever want to see our country go there. But if someone's going to be here illegal, they better be a model citizen. They better never, ever, ever get caught doing anything illegal. They better not ever, steal a candy bar or, go 1 mile over the speed limit. They better not ever have an act. So the point I'm trying to make is that the likelihood is that you will get found out at some point. And, if it's past, and this is the key, if it's past that period of time that you had to make things right, like I said, a year. And for people that have maybe lived here for a long time, speak good English, there's going to be extenuating circumstances for some people. I know of a person who was brought here illegally as a child. They've never known anything but America, right? That's kind of what the DREAM Act was about. Mm-hmm. There are extenuating circumstances where exceptions can be made. They get fast tracked through immigration, something like that. But for just your average person who came here, in the last few years, I think that it's real simple. You either get out of here within a year, or if we catch you, you will be permanently banned from ever coming to America, ever.
Because essentially it's just like anybody else as a citizen who breaks the law. If you break the law, it's you get put on probation.
That's right. And another thing too, or maybe at a minimum, you got to wait 10 years before, you can ever apply to come into this country again. If maybe you're nonviolent, maybe you're just somebody who's working and, earning a living, and you're a good, you're a good, not citizen, but you're a good illegal alien here. Maybe with them, we say, hey, look, we caught you. You had a year amnesty to be able to leave our country. You chose not to. So now you have to leave our country and you can't come back for 10 years.
You see, now part of that is where I have an issue with the whole dreamer thing, the whole movement to allow the dreamers to be able to stay here, even though they are still illegal immigrants in this country. The vast majority of them never took the time, the opportunity, and a lot of them now are our age. They're in their 30s.
I can't blame the kids though. I mean,
they're in their 30s.
I know, but like some of their 30s, some of them didn't know.
But yeah,
I can actually speak to that. I knew a lady once who she was brought here illegally, and she didn't know until she turned 18 and went to go get an ID. And then she found out she wasn't even here legally, and that she was basically kidnapped and brought here, that her parents essentially kidnapped her. And it was a really terrible situation, but she doesn't know anything but America. She doesn't know, anything about anything else. She doesn't even speak Spanish.
The point I was making with that is and I'm assuming this lady is now by this point in time, maybe mid-20s. When she found out she was 18, she's probably mid-20s by now. Did she take it upon herself to then begin to process that to become
in all fairness, she really screwed up because she was here. Actually, she's older, and she was here during I think when Reagan had a amnesty period of time. She could have done it then. She didn't. So I do think that these are complicated issues. They're not simple, but it's really it is really. I think there's a way to be compassionate and at the same time to demand lawfulness. And like I said, that's why I think, and maybe some people might argue with me and say, well, hey, no, they need to be given 30 days. I just know that personally, in order to move and up and, take care of business, close down accounts, do whatever needs to be done, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that. And so I think that a year, I think is more than enough time. And, for these people to contact their relatives down there and be like, hey, I got to come back down there. And, can I stay with you temporarily or, go find a job down there or whatever. It's not our problem. That's the thing. It's not our problem. It's their problem. But the onus needs to be on them. And, another option could be if they're, of military age, okay, look, you don't want to go down there. Fine. You join the military, you serve this country and you do your time. And you're going to be on a guarantee, absolute contract. But of course, they have to qualify for that. They have to be somebody that doesn't have any criminal activity, somebody that can get a clearance. So we have programs right now like that. When I was in the Army, I knew a guy from Nigeria. He got his citizenship by joining the U.S. Army. But he had
three of them in my unit.
That's right. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that could be done compassionately that put the burden where it needs to be. But these people got to recognize that, they're going to fight for this country if we go to war. Like right now, maybe that's a solution to the problem of not being able to, to find enough people to recruit. We say to half of these people, hey,
same thing.
Look, if you want, you have a choice. You get out of here in a year or you enlist. Those are your choices.
I'm pretty sure.
Get out of here or you enlist.
I'm pretty sure there were several 18-year-olds back there in the late 1960s and 70s that were given the same options.
And maybe
you go to jail or you.
That's right. And maybe that's the option that you give for, some of the dreamers too, that, failed to do what they were supposed to do. Is you say, look, it's real simple. You want to be able to stay here. You're going to enlist in the military. Otherwise you're out of here. You serve or you're out. And, and that's that to me, these are ways that, in a way it's kind of like, and I know this is probably controversial, but in a way it's kind of like indentured servitude, right? They have a debt that they need to pay. The debt is that they came into this country illegally. So they got two choices. They either go to jail or better yet, get, returned to their country of origin. And if we catch you again, then you're going to be, but again, this is why we need the wall so that we can't do, they can't do that again. But we say you either go back or you have a year to get, fit for duty in service to your country. And, and if you fail, you fail your PT tests or you fail your, if you can't get through basic training and, you can't get through, because you don't know English or whatever, then, then you're not qualified. You got to know English. But if you know English, maybe you're a dreamer or something like that, you serve your country. And then not only do you get your citizenship, but now you also have something to be proud of because you served your country. And I think that's a fair deal.
I would even say drop the requirements down from a 4-year enlistment to a 2-year. National Guard reserves or active army.
Similar. Yep. Israel has a similar policy for, once you turn a certain age as a citizen, you have to at least do 2 years in the armed forces. Interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing is that, we'll never have that for American citizens. I mean, at least I think I don't think we should. I think, military service should be voluntary. But I do think that for people who are not here illegal, or not here legally, that is a good alternative, at least for some of them. It doesn't work for everybody. Clearly, people who are older, who exceed the age requirements, or who have some disability or something that they're that they're not able to serve, well, then that's not going to work for them. But I think there's creative solutions that can where we can deal with some of these things. Like I said, a lot of, and the fact is, like I said, any of these guys that are here that are criminals, that are, violent criminals, let me rephrase it, because they're all criminals technically. But
True.
Any that are here that are violent criminals or that are in the drug trade, they need to be ousted and permanently banned from ever setting foot in our country ever again.
I'm
100% agree with that one.
Well, I tell you what, sir, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And I got to say, I'm still truly fascinated. And floored with a lot of your experiences that you've gone through and that you've had to deal with and overcome with that. And I really want to be able to give you the opportunity to have as much help as absolutely possible. So Jamie and I would really like to be able to do anything that we can. And the one thing that we can do the most effectively is to really help get out your, I'm going to be blatantly honest with you, or blatantly honest with our viewers on this. He is a candidate that is running for an office. Campaigns cost money.
Absolutely.
These things are not free. Mr. Cain is running on a platform to represent the interests of not only just those in West Virginia. Yes, he will be beholden to those in West Virginia via elections, but he will be a voice that will represent the United States.
That's right.
So it can come from anywhere, and I would encourage it to come from anywhere, just simply because of the fact that you really will have an impact on California, on Maine, on Georgia, on Texas, everywhere, because you will have one of the votes that will influence policy.
So, Mr. Cain, where can our viewers go to find more about your campaign and donate?
Sure. So they can go to my campaign website, which is NateCain4WV.com. That's NateCain, the number 4, WV.com. That's the campaign site. There is a button up in the upper right-hand corner. It says donate, and that will take you to the donor site where you can donate easily online. And the instructions are in that donation as to, what the rules are and all of that. But also there's I have some people that actually help with our campaign that are not here in West Virginia. Like the gal that set everything up for tonight, my comms director. She's not from here. But she's been absolutely, extremely helpful. There's a lot of things that we, go into a campaign, and that it's not easy. Yes. And we're having, we've got a lot of events, a lot of event planning goes into that. We need people that have that kind of experience that can help us with that sort of thing. And when I say help, I mean, I'm talking for free. Nobody right now in the campaign is taking a salary, although there's some that absolutely deserve one, because they've put so much hours and effort into this, but we just don't have the funding. We've raised about $20,000 to $30,000. About $12,000 of that has come from my own money. I can't continue to do that because I do have, bills and commitments that I have to pay. And one of the biggest things is, as I mentioned, this is going to be a major pay cut for me, which means I need to eliminate all the debt that I have. And, my business, credit cards and things like that have got to get paid down. I can't do that, obviously, if I'm spending all my excess money on my campaign. So I need people who are going to help me, fund my campaign. I need people that are going to help, help us do things like, if you're really talented with artwork, I want to get some memes created. I love memes. I have some great ideas on it, but I'm not an artist. And so I need somebody that can do that kind of stuff. And one thing I'm going to mention too, my opponent that I'm running against, the main guy I'm running against, he's the current treasurer of West Virginia. He is an interesting guy, I'll say the least. He's running as a Republican, but yet he was the vice president of the Podesta Group in 2017. at exactly the time that I was blowing the whistle on Hillary Clinton. He was working for Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, and as their vice president. He was a foreign registered agent in the Ukraine, a foreign registered agent for the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. So in other words, representing other countries' interests to the United States government, essentially buying and bribing, congressmen for votes. And now he wants to be on the other side of that gravy train. And I find that, a bit suspicious, to say the least. I think that most West Virginians should have a problem with that. I think most Americans should have a problem with that. But the fact is that because of him being the treasurer, he's the nephew of Shelley Moore Capito, our Rhino senator. He has a lot of that, establishment money behind him. And, he's got, a $500,000 in his, war chest. So he's really the main competition that I'm going up against. There's a few other guys that are running too, but he's really the main one I got to overcome. And that's where I need people to help me. I need people that are going to help me raise the funds necessary to get the ads, to put up signs, to do things like that, to print out the things that we need to print out for events. And then we're also, we have an event coming up here in Parkersburg. And so those spaces have to be rented. Equipment has to be set up, all that kind of stuff that goes into an event. And so those are things that people can help us with. And I'm not just letting you guys know like what goes into it, because a lot of people may not even realize, it's more than just advertisement. It is a lot. And then on top of that, it's the fact that, we're spending, we did 8,000 miles on our car the last month. And so, that's a lot of gas. That's a lot of mileage. Most of the time we're not staying in hotels. We're going out there. We're getting back at, 2 a.m. and then I'm getting up and going to work at 6. I can't sustain that forever. And so when we have like those types of trips that are on the other side of the state, having them, the funds available to stay at a hotel so that I don't have to risk my life driving home, at midnight, those types of things, we do have to do. So I hope you don't mind me sharing a little more detail. But, I know for me, if I'm going to put my money into somebody's campaign, I'd like to know what they're going to spend it on. And so those are some of the things that, that we're looking to do and we're going to need to do, especially as we get closer to the primary. The other thing too, is if there's anybody that's watching this that is in West Virginia, anybody in the 2nd district, please get out and vote on the primary. May 14th, we need, people to show up at the primary, because this state is a red state. It's going to go to whoever wins the primary. That is going to be the person, the Republican primary is going to be the person who gets elected. This is a MAGA state. It is a pro-Trump state. It is a red state. And, but, not all Republicans are equal. And, just because somebody has that R in front of their name does not mean, that they believe in the same values that you believe in. And so it's important for people to, do things like this, and get on your show and talk about what they actually believe in and be asked questions and stuff. So I appreciate you guys having me on and offering me an opportunity, to share my thoughts and ideas, with you. And I hope that people will see this and that word will get out there, because I do think that I have a lot to offer the state of West Virginia and, quite frankly, the United States. A lot of these issues that we're going through right now in our country related to, national security. The border is a national security issue that is, extremely important. These issues of government tyranny through, our spy apparatus and them using it on American citizens. That kind of stuff's got to stop, because, when that kind of abuses is happening, how many people do you think that might be down there in Washington, D.C. or in their courts, judges, congressmen that are being blackmailed right now? I would say that there's a good chance that some of them are, based on the types of surveillance systems that I know are in existence and based on the evidence that they're being abused. So when you have that kind of thing happening, that makes it removes safety for all Americans, because essentially the people that we voted for and we sent to Washington aren't, or judges that got appointed aren't necessarily keeping to their oath or serving the people any longer. They're basically being extorted and being coerced into decisions that they otherwise would not make had they not been being blackmailed or bribed. So,
or just flat out terrorized. I mean, I believe that. I mean, what we saw with it's Gorsuch when you had a gentleman show up outside of his house that's willing to.
That's right.
He was there to kill him. No, it's Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh.
Yeah, it's Kavanaugh with that one. But yeah, no, I mean that's. I can completely see that. But again, I want to say thank you for coming on and speaking with us. This has been, again, truly an honor to be able to speak with you.
Profound and interesting.
Someone who not only put in their own personal time, their own life into serving us through our military, but someone who really took it upon themselves to make sure that, so try and make sure that corruption did not spread in areas where it really shouldn't be, or we should have ultimate transparency. I would say that is who you are in a nutshell. You are transparency in this regard.
Yeah. And on that note, that's another thing too. This is probably something that's not going to be very popular with, I know it'll be popular with the people, but with Congress, it probably will not be. It will definitely not endear, me to many people. Because I'll be doing this as an example, and I do intend to virtue signal with it. There is a proper way to do that. But when it comes to transparency, I don't think that any special interest group, any lobbyist should be able to come in and talk to a congressman without that conversation being recorded and made public. So unless it's a whistleblower, that would be the one exception. Something that you need to protect somebody's identity. But the fact is if some drug company comes in and they want to talk to me, I'm willing to talk to them because maybe that drug company wants to do business in West Virginia, or maybe, some oil company wants to do, business in West Virginia. But in order for me to not be corrupted by that, it needs to be 100% transparent and made available to the public immediately. So in other words, I can put on a camera or a microphone and record the conversation, and I'll let them know, hey, you want to meet with me, the conversation is going to be recorded and it's going to be published publicly in its entirety. And if they don't want to, if they don't want that, well, then I guess they don't want to meet with me. That's kind of how I feel about it. When years ago, about 25 years ago, I was a city councilman for a very short period of time, and they had a rule that I thought was really wise. And that was that if you wanted to meet with members of the public, particularly companies, you had to notify the press, and the press had to be allowed into the room. There was no allowance at all for private conversations between businessmen and the city councilman. And I think that's a good rule. I think it avoids corruption because at the end of the day, transparency, that is truly the one thing that might actually, prevent corruption. So,
disease can't grow in light.
That's right.
Well, again, sir,
thank you.
Yeah, sincerely. And we will be keeping in communication with you and talking with you more and more as your campaign goes along. And we wish you all the best with this. And Jamie and I will do everything that we can to help you along the way.
Yeah, and hopefully we can, get you back on closer to primary time too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how things are going.
And I love your format of, the questions that you asked. They're not easy questions, but they're good. They prompt me to actually really think things through. One thing that I do want to mention to folks is that for those of you that are on social media, you can find me at Nate Cain for WV. It's the same as like my campaign site. So at Nate Cain, the number 4 WV. You'll find me on pretty much all social media. Twitter, of course. Facebook, Instagram, and Truth Social, Gab, Getter, you name it. If there's social media out there, I'm probably on it.
Awesome. Well, sir, it has been a pleasure, and we will be speaking with you again here soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. God bless.
God bless.
All right. So I got to say, I was truly, I was truly captivated with a lot of that. Mr. Cain has had not only an extraordinary career throughout the military, but took it upon himself again and really in service of the country to make sure that corruption that has leached into our highest levels saw the light of day.
Think about, that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of impact that you have, that is the definition of high risk, high reward, high level intensity. I mean, there are very few people who can operate at that level. And I mean, those are the people that we need in Congress.
I completely agree with that. Mr. Cain has some great ideas. He's got great values. He's got what seems like a great drive. And I would truly be happy to see him succeed with that. I think he could become one of the greats.
I have to agree with you.
Well, with that, we like to take a moment to again speak to our loyal subjects, and we'd like to do that by reminding them, although by this point in time, let's be honest, we shouldn't have to. They already know what they're supposed to be doing. The subliminal messaging has taken effect and it's taken hold.
So I don't know where he comes up with this stuff, folks.
Now at this point in time, a compulsory thing as opposed to just optional. It's no longer optional.
They already know what to do.
Yes. But
he has me binding to it now.
If this is your first time, look deeply into the screen and follow the sound of my voice. There is a like button below this video. You are required to select it. We also like for you to hit the share button as well and help spread Jamie's message out as far and wide. We're trying to really get him, you know, we're trying to help him out. And
now he brings me into it.
Yeah, I have to.
Hit the donate button.
Exactly. Just like he said. And you can find that donate bar, that sponsor tab, on conservativestalk.org. And it is, again, in the upper right-hand corner. So we also like to take a moment to say a quick thank you to our affiliates. And our first one being Veterans for America First. So you can find Veterans for America First at veteransforamericafirst.org. You can, oh, fuck me. I'm glad I paused there before I started that. Forgot about that news, and I forgot to do the affiliates in the opening.
I saw that, but I was just going to ignore it since we're going to go to West Virginia.
Why? I mean, so we can get them there too.
Yeah.
Oh, screw it. Let's just we'll go back and knock that one. Okay. Well, so we want to take a moment to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So you can find Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net. We also want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First. You can find Veterans for America First at veteransforamericafirst.org. We also want to say a quick thank you to their media arm being Vet Voice, and you can find Vet Voice on every major social media platform. So, Jamie, with that, how about you give us your final thoughts?
Again, I just want to kind of close with this. You know, we're getting close to the GAGOP state convention. This is another perfect time to get involved. Not to be a broken record, but June 8th through 10th, we love to see you in Columbus. And similar to our interview today, the big thing is going to be if you want to get involved, doesn't matter anywhere in the country. If you want to run for public office at any level, go on to our website and go to that contact page and shoot us your information. And we can connect you with the right person in the right place at the right time in the right state. So
that was a lot of right.
From the right.
I think we're literally back where we started.
NASCAR.
Just went in a circle.
We went opposite NASCAR. Anyway. But with that, we do want to continue to push forward with making sure that, you know, good people like Mr. Cain, no matter what state you're in, we can help you kind of move your message forward and move the America First agenda policy forward across the country. So again, shoot us your contact information and we'll help you.
And with that, this is Conservatives Talk, and we will see you soon.